Hello, everybody. I almost wasn't going to post today's episode, especially after all the months of silence. Like, what has anybody got to learn from me, and what could I possibly add to the conversation that's going on right now? And especially later on in the episode, you'll see I'm a little embarrassed by the way it went, but it's specifically because people like me don't usually talk about these things, and because I was a little embarrassed about my reaction to it, and also shocked by my reaction to the thoughts that were going through my head, that I figured I should post it. And maybe it was a maybe it doesn't do anything, and maybe nobody feels anything, and maybe it's all lost in the noise of everything that's happening right now. But even if it is, I needed to do it at the end of the day. And if anything I say offends anybody, please let me know, and I'll do my best to explain my point of view. And please just listen. That's all I ask. Thank you, and as always, I love you guys. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to I Bought a Microphone. So I know I haven't been very active the last couple of months, and I mean, it's funny. The irony of that is, originally I started this show because I had moved from Tucson to Chandler, and I know I felt increasingly isolated over a period of time, and I used this medium as a way to reach out, to try to connect with people. And I mean, there are people that I know that listen to the show, and I appreciate that, and I love them for doing that. I was kind of hoping for a little more follow up from them, maybe a word or two in the comments, which I never got. But that's and I'm not blaming them for that. I mean, that's that I should have been more vocal about what I was asking for. Like, I wasn't just creating a podcast just to create a podcast. It was a cry for help, is what it was at the time. Eventually it evolved into something else, and then eventually I just stopped doing it because I didn't need it anymore. It's not like it was driving traffic or anything. Like, it's not like I was making money off of it. So the need for it stopped. I didn't feel as isolated anymore. And then ironically, when the social distancing and the all of that happened, I didn't reopen the podcast, which I probably should have, because that's the ideal time. It's not, and it would be not so much just for me, vent my frustrations about specific things, but also would give other people a distraction from the humdrum and the just the boredom and just whatever else their lives. Though, being here in Arizona, my experience was pretty, it wasn't like California where everything was shut down. Like, there were people that were requested to stay at home, but it wasn't really enforced, and people weren't really doing it. I mean, I went to the store, and that was pretty much it. I started working from home. I did my part to social distance. I'm still doing it because, so I mean, even if I can survive COVID-19, which is, I'm not the the fittest guy in the world, so who knows if that's possible. But even if I could, I mean, even if I can, and even if I did, and even if I already have, well, there's people in my life that I don't want to expose to it. There's, people that I know and love and care about who could, be negatively affected by that, and I absolutely don't want that to happen. So I minimize. I basically, the times I go out of the house, I go to the store or I go, to very specific places. And, I wash my fucking hands as soon as I walk through the door and, all that. I do my best to minimize effects on people. That was crazy, but, we got through it and decided that was it. We decided we were going to move on from there as a country. I didn't necessarily agree with it. As much as I, felt, increasingly isolated and cut off from society, still, I was willing to do my part, to keep the curve down. And then, we stopped doing that and suddenly cases exploded, shockingly. I don't think we all saw that coming, but I was monitoring the infection rate, like the number of cases that were reported over the number of days, and instead of decreasing, they, kind of stayed flat, and then, a couple of days they would go up, then they would go down, and then go up again. Like, they didn't decrease, is the thing. We didn't stop getting new cases of COVID. We had a steady rate of cases of COVID. And then we stopped the stay-at-home orders. We, we stopped the requirements for social distancing. And suddenly, cases skyrocketed. Shocking. So, this is... So, IBAM is not one thing. We're not about entertainment. We're not about politics. We're not about blah, 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 blah. We're not about any particular thing. We're about what's important to me. What's important to this guy right here. And I gotta tell you right now, what's important to me. There's a couple of things. All right, so government is supposed to serve the people. All right? That's what its main function is supposed to do. Police have on their badges protect and serve, and we'll talk about police later. But essentially, that's their function, is to keep people alive so that we can prosper, right? So that we can, generate taxes and things, so that we can fund services and jobs that the government provides, right? If the government was, detrimental to the people, if the people were dying off because the government was so terrible at its job, like, maybe it's a shitty government, because the more people that die off, the less taxes you have, right? So even from a capitalist standpoint, that's a terrible business model, right? You want to preserve as much life as possible so that you can continue to gain revenue from it. I know that's a cold-blooded way of looking at society. I'm just saying, even the cold, bloodiest motherfuckers out there, like the Mitch McConnells of the world, can see the benefit of keeping your constituents alive so you can continue to milk them for money, right? Like, that I think would be at least the bare minimum of what we would expect from our government, right? But we don't even have that. We don't. They're perfectly fine with people dying by the thousands if it inconveniences them even in the slightest. And I'm not even because it's not us that they care about. We're not the ones that are giving hundreds of thousands of dollars of political donations. You know, we have the majority of the votes, especially if you include, you know, the young people who refuse to vote. And I was once one, and, you know, honestly, I get their point of view, especially after the last election. Like, what's their fucking impetus? Like, why would they even bother to get involved in the political process when somebody like Donald Trump gets elected? You know, I understand now when my parents were, you know, really upset about George W. Bush. Like, I get it now. That was their generation's Donald Trump. He wasn't nearly as incompetent as Donald Trump, but he was still, you know, terrible in his own way. It's hard now to look at things in a positive way, to move forward to a positive growth. Especially now, finally, there is now a conversation being done publicly about police abuse and overreaching and the wholesale slaughter of black people by the police in America. And that's what it is. It's not, there's no sugar coating. We're not talking about bad apples, you know, in a barrel. We're talking about, because even if, and let's assume for half a second that it's just a few bad apples that are murdering a few black people, which again, even that sentence is horrific in its connotations, but that's not half the problem. Bad people doing bad things in their jobs happen, but there are other people in those jobs that witness them doing bad things. They don't say anything. So it's not just a few bad apples. It's also a few thousand regular apples that refuse to report the bad apples that they see doing bad things. You know, it's fucking Blue Lives Matter. I get it. Police do a ridiculously hard job. A job that no person should be asked to do. No one person should have to do all of those things. And that's what defund the police is all about. Okay? There are things that cops are good at. And there are things that cops are really fucking shitty at. All right? Homelessness should not be a criminal act. Drug addiction should not be a criminal act. And there are people that I know personally who, you know, might not feel the same way that I do about law enforcement, and that's fine. We can discuss this and see how we can deal with things in certain ways, but I think everyone is benefited if less people are incarcerated. I mean, just having a felony conviction on your record precludes you from ever getting, like, even some of the most basic jobs. And if you can't work to feed yourself and your family because of a felony conviction, what are your other options except to return to a life of crime? So if we stop making non-violent crimes felonies, treat them as the health crisis that they are, the same way we treat opiate addiction in this country, let's treat cocaine and heroin the same way. It's a health crisis. It's not a fucking war on crime. I don't know. I'm all over the place. I'm unfocused. I see that now. And obviously you do too. So many things. So many things that I want to talk about. And I don't. I guess, because it's because nobody wants to talk about them, because it would be uncomfortable, because it's just so many things that we could talk about or should talk about or would talk about. But I'd rather have a good time. I'd rather it's uncomfortable to talk about these things. We don't talk about these things in polite company. One thing I noticed about growing up white, and now it's something that I'm forced to confront, is that we don't talk about racism in our houses. I mean, if somebody, says something against black people, we would say, yes, you don't say that about black people. Black people are just as good as white people. The fact is that the system doesn't treat them that way. And that's something that I've come to realize over the years. And it's I mean, now it's come to the forefront, and now we're forced to deal with it. But it's not, if I'm being honest, I've always noticed it. Okay, so I'm going to make a couple of generalizations that's going to make a lot of you really offended and uncomfortable, and you can all go fuck yourself, because this is me confronting my own social prejudices and airing them for all the world to see. Yeah, all the world to see. The 5 people that actually listen to this. But still, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Okay. So I've always kind of looked at being white as being a man. Okay? So, like, when you're a woman, you get a lot of restrictions. All right? So you got periods. So you got to deal with tampons. You can't necessarily pee wherever you want. And as a man, whatever. I don't have periods. I don't have that restriction. As a man, I can point it like a laser gun wherever I want it to go. So pretty much the world is my bathroom. Honestly. I can pee wherever I want. And that's kind of how I saw being white for a long time. It's just, it's an advantage that I have over black people, right? I was born white, so I can, get alone when I want to, and I can, and a number of other things that I could, draw out the metaphor. But I think the point that it gets to is it's definitely not the same thing. I mean, the advantage I have over women now, I know, is also socioeconomical. The advantage I have over the black people is pretty much similar. And also, if I get stopped by a police officer, I am exponentially less likely to die in that encounter than a black person is. And it's something that I've known. I mean, it's not. It wasn't always known to me, but I've known it longer than I've said or done anything about it. Obama was president, so that was it. We were done. We won. You know, race relations were going to improve. We'd proved that a black person could do the job. I It was a good 8 years. It was. But apparently there were a bunch of people that were just seething, just roiling hatred in their guts that just was waiting to explode. And this orange monstrosity came on the scene, and they were given carte blanche to express all the hatred that they just been holding deep inside them. And I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I don't hate racist people. I probably should, but I've got no room. Got no time. I've got no... I don't understand why people waste their time on hate. And now here I am, the stupid, naive white guy who's breaking down, even though I've had everything handed to me and I haven't really had to work very hard for anything that I've achieved. So fuck me, right? And I'm saying it. Fuck me. Like... I contribute very little to society other than, tax money. I don't hate anybody. I spend my time trying to make the people in my life that I feel improve it. I try to make their lives better for having known me. I don't understand why you would spend your time trying to destroy somebody else's happiness. Why you see them as inferior. I've struggled my whole life to try not to negatively infect anybody. That's all I really want at the end. Assuming that we're all not just stardust, and that when we die, the energy in our bodies turns to gas and decay, and there is actually a ledger that we're forced to show good and bad deeds, then I hope and pray that at the end of it all, that I never affected anyone negatively more than I positively did. That's all I really want. And that's all I want for anybody else. And even now, as I'm breaking down, which is shocking to me, I didn't expect this to be the result of this podcast. I mean, obviously, I never planned on this happening. It's a crazy time. It's all I can really say at this point. I mean, it's not the world I grew up in anymore. I grew up in the 90s. I mean, I was born in the 80s, but I grew up in the 90s, and it was a fantastic time to be alive and to be white. And here we are at the beginning of the 2020s, and life is chaos and frustration. And I mean, what do we do? I mean, what do we do? Okay, well, we got to accept a couple of things first. Black Lives Matter. They do. White people are not getting slaughtered by the police. It's not happening. All Lives Matter is bullshit. Black Lives Matter. Defund the police is it's a complicated issue. Defund the police. It's a fucking drastic, it's a radical idea. Defund the police. There is some valid arguments behind the idea. Now, there are levels. There are arguments for breaking down the entire police structure, rebuilding it from ground up. There are also arguments for taking certain resources that the police have, say for, dealing with people with mental illnesses, dealing with the homeless, dealing with people with drug addictions, and spending those funds on people who are trained in dealing with these issues, medical professionals, instead of foisting all of the social problems on the police and having them deal with it with pepper spray and truncheons. Maybe we can spend some of that money on trying to improve the conditions for the people who are forced into these social conditions, rather than just saying, police, deal with the things that we don't like. So there are extreme levels of defund the police, and there are less extreme levels. But either one is going to involve letting go of some police. There is also certain legislation involving the ability to investigate police brutality and hold officers accountable. And I've always been against mandatory minimums because they're completely irrational, and even judges don't like them. I'm trying to be less part of the problem. I'm trying to be more part of the solution. And I think together we can all move forward to a better tomorrow. And I think that anyone who tries to restrict people's voting rights, especially a president, their motives should come into question. And if you're still like, well, why would I vote for Joe Biden? Well, maybe because he's not a narcissistic fucking uber capitalist asshole who's willing to sacrifice our future so that he can make his friends, a little bit more billions of dollars. Trump has done nothing, absolutely nothing for working people in America. He has done everything that he possibly can to improve the lives of rich people. And you know what? Fucking prove me wrong. Show me where he's done good things for the disenfranchised. I mean, I'm kind of a lower middle class white American, so I'm pretty much not affected by social policies, either good or bad. Especially since I'm white. So I kind of just exist in the void. Nobody listens to me. Nobody cares what I have to say. Because they're assumed that I have their vote either way. Either one of them. As I end this, I gotta say, I want social justice now. I want reform now. I want things to change now. I don't expect them to, but I want them to. And I will do what I can. Again, I don't have a lot of financial clout, but my voice as a white man in the middle class bracket between, 35 and 60, it's gotta mean something. Let's see what I can do. Even if it's nothing. Even if it turns out to be meaningless, just know that I never wanted this. I had white privilege. I honestly never denied it. I kind of embraced it for a long time. I was like, hey, this being born white and male is pretty fucking sweet. And now it's still pretty fucking sweet, and I'm not going to deny that. It would be dishonest of me to do that. But I do realize that there is a certain power in my position. And this little crybaby is going to do what he can to vote for people who want to see change in our policies. Because I hope that one day the world can be what I thought it was as I was growing up. A world where anybody, regardless of their ethnic background, can achieve something in this country. I've been in many traffic stops and I've been very nervous because I thought I was going to get a ticket. Never once did I fear for my life. Not once. Did I ever talk to a cop and have to worry that in the next minute I would be restrained and that a couple minutes later I would be dead from a chokehold, or that after meeting the cop and complying with his instructions that I would be shot dead. These are not things that I have had to worry about, nor do I think will I have to worry about going forward. And this is a fucking problem. I stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. I support defund the police. And I risk nothing by saying these things. I'm white, I'll be fine. It's disgusting. This has been I Bought a Microphone. I love you guys. I do. And I hope you're all safe and healthy. I hope to talk to you soon.